My name is Sherry Walker, 36 years old, and the day my father died changed everything. For years, my brother Maxwell strutted around town as the golden son, the heir apparent to Walker Construction and Real Estate. Everyone knew he would get it all. Even at the funeral, he was already acting like the owner. Little did he know Dad had other plans. When the will was read, Maxwell announced confidently what everyone assumed. But that smirk vanished from his face when the lawyer revealed the truth. If you want to know who really inherited everything, like and subscribe, and let me know where you are watching from as I share how my life turned upside down. Growing up as Roger Walker's daughter was complicated. From the outside, everyone saw a successful businessman who doted on his son while merely tolerating his daughter. Dad built Walker Construction from nothing into the largest commercial builder in our county, expanding into a real estate portfolio worth millions. His rough hands and straightforward manner made him a respected figure in our community, someone who delivered on promises and never cut corners. My brother Maxwell was 7 years my senior, and from my earliest memories, he was being groomed to take over. Dad would take him to construction sites on weekends, teaching him about foundation work and load-bearing walls when other kids were watching cartoons. By the time Maxwell turned 18, he had a desk at the company office with his name on it. He dropped any thoughts of college and dove straight into the family business. College is for people who need to work for someone else, Maxwell would say with that condescending smile of his. I already have my future secured. What no one saw were the quiet moments at home. When I was 12, Dad found me at the kitchen table struggling with math homework. Instead of simply walking past, he sat down beside me. "Show me what you are working on, Sherry," he said. I explained the algebra problems, and to my surprise, he nodded with understanding. Numbers tell stories if you know how to read them. In business, the person who understands the numbers holds the real power. That night began a different kind of education. While Maxwell learned the visible parts of the business, Dad taught me the invisible foundation that supported everything. Finance, strategic planning, and people management. These lessons happened privately, often late in the evening when Maxwell was out with friends or his girlfriend Amanda. I took a different path than my brother. I left for college at 18, earning my business degree and later an MBA with a specialization in construction management. Dad paid for my education quietly, asking only that I not broadcast my specific area of study to the family. Maxwell assumed I was getting some useless liberal arts degree and never bothered to ask details. When I graduated and took a job with a financial management firm in Chicago, 300 miles from our hometown of Bedford, Maxwell seemed relieved. In his mind, I was out of the picture, no longer even a minor consideration in the Walker business empire. "Glad you found something to keep you busy," he said during a rare phone call. "Some little spreadsheet job, right? At least Dad only has to worry about one kid now." The dismissal in his voice was unmistakable. My mother might have balanced the family dynamics, but she passed away from breast cancer when I was 15. Without her gentle influence, the division between Maxwell and me only grew wider. Dad retreated further into his work after her death, becoming more reserved emotionally while expanding the business aggressively. At family gatherings, Maxwell dominated conversations with business talk, positioning himself as Dad's right hand and eventual successor. I watched how he worked the room, slapping backs and making promises, always with an eye toward who could be useful. What he never noticed was how Dad would watch these performances with a slight furrow in his brow. During my visits home, Dad and I developed a ritual. We would sit on the back porch after everyone else had gone to bed, drinking coffee regardless of the hour, and he would ask about my work, my insights, my observations about business trends. These conversations grew more substantive over the years. "The company books look good on the surface," he confided during one such night when I was 33. "Revenue is up 20% year over year." "But," I prompted, recognizing his tone. "But the margins are shrinking, and Maxwell keeps pushing for more expansion before we have consolidated what we have." He sighed, rubbing his weathered face. "He sees the glory, not the foundation." These conversations remained our secret. To the outside world, including Maxwell, I was simply the daughter who had moved away, who called on birthdays and visited on holidays. The daughter who had chosen a different path, who had no claim or interest in Walker construction. As Dad entered his 70s, I noticed changes. He tired more easily. The robust man who could outwork men half his age began taking afternoon breaks. He called me more frequently, often discussing business challenges under the guise of hypothetical situations. During my last Christmas visit before his diagnosis, I overheard Maxwell talking to his wife Amanda in the kitchen. "Once Dad steps down, we will sell off that eastern commercial property and expand into the riverfront development," he said confidently. "Dad is too cautious. That property has been sitting for years when it could be leveraged." "But I thought he was saving that for the company pension fund," Amanda replied. Maxwell laughed. "The old man needs to understand times have changed. When I take over, we will modernize everything." I said nothing, but that night, I mentioned the conversation to Dad. He nodded slowly, looking out at the snow-covered backyard. "Some lessons can only be learned through consequences," he said cryptically. "But sometimes the cost of those lessons is too high for everyone involved." I did not understand what he meant then. Only later would his words make sense. The call came on a rainy Tuesday morning in April. Dad had collapsed at a job site and been rushed to Bedford Memorial Hospital. By the time I arrived after a frantic 5-hour drive, the diagnosis was confirmed. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, already spread to his liver. The doctor spoke in hushed, gentle tones about making him comfortable and quality-of-life decisions. Maxwell took charge immediately, questioning the doctors about experimental treatments and second opinions. I sat quietly beside Dad's bed, holding his hand, feeling the calluses earned through decades of work. "How long?" I asked the oncologist when we stepped into the hallway. 3 months would be optimistic," she replied, compassion in her eyes. "It could be less." That afternoon, I called my boss in Chicago and requested a leave of absence. By evening, I had sublet my apartment and moved into my old bedroom at Dad's house. Maxwell raised his eyebrows when I announced my intention to be Dad's primary caretaker. "You sure about that?" "There are professionals we can hire," he said. "The business still needs attention." "I am sure," I replied simply. The next 12 weeks became a blur of doctor appointments, medication schedules, and long conversations with Dad. As his body weakened, his mind remained sharp, and we talked more openly than ever before. Maxwell visited daily, but rarely stayed longer than 30 minutes, always with some business emergency requiring his attention. One evening, as I adjusted Dad's pillows, he gripped my wrist with surprising strength. "The company records are not what they seem," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Maxwell has been making decisions without consulting me for the past 2 years. Signing my name on documents, his breathing was labored, each word an effort. I let him think I did not notice. I started to speak, but he continued. There is a red ledger in my home office safe. The combination is your birthday. That ledger tells the real story." That night, after Dad fell asleep, I found the safe hidden behind a painting of our family from when Mom was still alive. Inside was a thick red leather ledger with meticulous notes in Dad's precise handwriting, documenting discrepancies between official company records and actual transactions. Notes about unauthorized loans, diverted funds, and questionable client relationships filled dozens of pages. The next morning, Dad seemed stronger, more alert. "Did you find it?" he asked immediately. I nodded, unable to find words. "I started keeping separate records 3 years ago when things did not add up," he explained. "Not embezzlement, not exactly, but risky moves, corner-cutting. Maxwell thinks with his ego, not his head." "Why did you let it continue?" I asked. Dad sighed deeply. "I wanted to give him chance to correct his course. And I needed time to put other plans in place." Over the following weeks, between pain medications and breathing treatments, Dad shared more details. He had been systematically restructuring the company ownership without Maxwell's knowledge, working with his attorney to create a new operational framework. "Sherry," he said one afternoon as sunlight streamed through the window, highlighting how thin his face had become, "I need you to promise me something." "Anything," I replied, fighting back tears. "Promise me you will keep the Walker legacy alive. The right way. With integrity." Confusion must have shown on my face. "But Maxwell runs everything now. He is the face of Walker Construction." Dad managed a small smile. "Things are not always what they seem. Promise me." "I promise," I said, still not understanding what he was asking of me. 2 days later, he called for Maxwell and me to sit with him together, something he had avoided throughout his illness. "The company papers," he said to Maxwell, "the originals are with Jackson Williams. After I am gone, he will explain everything." Maxwell nodded impatiently. "I know, Dad. We have discussed the succession plan for years. Everything is in order." Dad's eyes flickered to me momentarily. "Yes, everything is in order." That night, he slipped into a coma. 3 days later, with both Maxwell and me at his bedside, Roger Walker took his final breath. He was 76 years old. The funeral was exactly as Dad would have wanted it. Practical, dignified, without excessive sentiment. Maxwell gave an eloquent eulogy highlighting Dad's business accomplishments and community contributions. I noticed how he worked the room afterward, accepting condolences while simultaneously reassuring clients and business partners about the company's stable future under his leadership. "Nothing will change," I overheard him telling the mayor. "Except perhaps we will finally move forward with some modernization plans Dad was hesitant about." As people filtered out of the reception, Jackson Williams, Dad's attorney for over 30 years, approached me. "Your father was very clear about the timeline," he said quietly. "The will reading is scheduled for 2 weeks from today." He was most insistent about the date. I nodded, wondering why the specific timing mattered. "He also asked me to give you this," Williams added, handing me a sealed envelope, with instructions to open it the night before the reading. I slipped the envelope into my purse, feeling Maxwell's eyes on us from across the room. The 2 weeks following the funeral unfolded in a strange limbo. I continued living in Dad's house, organizing his personal belongings while Maxwell took full command of the business. He called an all-hands meeting the very next day, announcing himself as the new CEO and outlining his vision for the company's future. "Dad built something great," he told me over dinner that evening, "but business models need to evolve. The company requires bold leadership now." I said nothing, remembering the red ledger hidden in my suitcase. 3 days after the funeral, Maxwell brought in a real estate agent to assess the house. "Just preliminary," he assured me when I questioned him. "We need to know the current market value for estate purposes." "The estate is not settled yet," I reminded him. He waved dismissively. "Formalities. We both know how this goes. You will get a fair settlement, Sherry." I am not unreasonable. His certainty should have angered me, but instead, I felt a curious calm. Dad's cryptic comments and the sealed letter waiting in my dresser drawer gave me reason to suspect the reading might not go as Maxwell expected. As the days passed, Maxwell became increasingly proprietary about the company and the house. He moved some of his things into Dad's home office and began hosting business meetings there. When I mentioned possibly returning to work in Chicago eventually, he seemed relieved. "Good thinking. Fresh start and all that. I can have the accountant prepare a nice severance package for you from the estate." "Severance package?" I questioned. "Figure of speech," he backtracked. "Your inheritance, I mean." On the 10th day after the funeral, I ran into Jackson Williams at the grocery store. He asked how I was holding up with deliberate emphasis. "Hanging in there," I replied. "Maxwell is already making big changes." Williams nodded thoughtfully. "Your father anticipated that. He also mentioned you might find the storage unit interesting." Storage unit? I had no idea what he meant. "Unit 321 at Safekeep Storage on Elm Street. Your father maintained it for the past 5 years. The key should be in his desk drawer, small blue key with a number tag. That afternoon, while Maxwell was at the office, I searched Dad's desk and found the key exactly where Williams had indicated. The storage facility was on the outskirts of town, a nondescript building of metal roll-up doors and security cameras. Unit 321 contained dozens of bankers' boxes, each meticulously labeled with dates and project names. I opened the most recent one and found complete duplicate records of company transactions, along with notes about discrepancies compared to the official books. Dad had been building a comprehensive case, documenting every questionable decision and financial irregularity under Maxwell's influence. More surprising were folders containing performance reviews of every key employee, including Maxwell, with Dad's unvarnished assessments. Maxwell's file was the thickest, documenting a pattern of impulsive decisions, credit-taking, and blame-shifting that had apparently worsened over time. One folder simply labeled Succession contained multiple drafts of reorganization plans dated over the past 5 years. The most recent version, finalized just 6 months before Dad's diagnosis, outlined a complete restructuring of company ownership and management. I spent hours reading through the documents, my understanding of Dad's cryptic comments growing clearer with each page. By the time I locked the unit and drove home, night had fallen, and my perspective had fundamentally shifted. Maxwell noticed my changed demeanor immediately. "You seem different," he commented over breakfast the next morning. "Coming to terms with everything." "Just processing," I replied neutrally. He studied me for a moment before nodding. "The will reading is tomorrow. I know it might be difficult for you, but try not to make things awkward. Business associates will be there." "Business associates?" "At a private will reading." Dad specified certain partners be present. Probably wanted to reassure them about the transition. He sipped his coffee. "I have invited Amanda and the kids too. Family affair and all that." That night, I finally opened Dad's letter. Inside was a single page with his familiar handwriting. "Sherry, by now you have seen the records and understand why I have made the choices reflected in my will. Tomorrow will be difficult. Maxwell will react badly. Remember that this is not about punishment but protection of the company, its employees, and yes, even Maxwell himself. You are stronger than you know. Your mother would be proud of the woman you have become." "I know I am." "Dad." I read the letter multiple times, tears streaming down my face, finally understanding the weight of the promise I had made. I was not just inheriting assets. I was being entrusted with a legacy and the responsibility to protect it, even from family. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a navy business suit I had brought from Chicago. Maxwell raised his eyebrows when he saw me. "Very professional," he commented. "But no need to impress anyone. This is a formality." "Nevertheless," I replied, "I want to honor Dad properly." Maxwell's wife Amanda arrived with their teenage children, Thomas and Sophia. She hugged me warmly, while the kids offered awkward condolences. Maxwell had dressed in his finest suit, complete with the gold watch Dad had given him on his 30th birthday. As we prepared to leave for the attorney's office, Maxwell pulled me aside. "Listen, Sherry. After this is done, we should talk about your plans. The house will need to be sold, but I can give you time to find a new place." The assumption in his voice, that the house would automatically be his, might have hurt me 2 weeks ago. Now I simply nodded. "We will definitely need to talk after the reading." He seemed pleased with my acquiescence, mistaking it for acceptance. "Just do not make a scene when the inevitable happens," he added in a low voice as we walked to the cars. "We are walkers. We handle things with dignity." I smiled slightly. "Do not worry, Maxwell. I will handle everything with perfect dignity." Jackson Williams' law office occupied the entire top floor of the Bedford Professional Building, with views overlooking the town square. By the time Maxwell, Amanda, the children, and I arrived, the conference room was already half full. 3 members of the company board were there, along with Dad's banker, his accountant, and 2 of his closest friends from the industry. Maxwell worked the room confidently, shaking hands and accepting condolences with practiced grace. I noticed how he strategically mentioned business continuity and exciting new directions with each conversation. "Ah, and here is my sister," he said as I approached a group of board members. "She has been a trooper through all this, coming back to help during Dad's final days." The way he phrased it made it sound like a brief visit rather than weeks of around-the-clock care. I smiled politely but said nothing. Williams entered precisely at 10 o'clock, carrying a leather portfolio and accompanied by his junior partner. The room quieted as he took his place at the head of the long mahogany table. "Thank you all for coming today," he began formally. "Roger was specific about who should be present for this reading, and I appreciate you honoring his wishes." He opened the portfolio and removed several documents. "Before I begin the formal reading, I want to note that Roger updated his will 6 months ago, with several addendums added 3 months ago. All documents have been properly witnessed and notarized." I saw Maxwell shift slightly in his seat, the first hint of uncertainty crossing his face. "That was right after our discussion about the riverfront expansion," he said smoothly. "Dad wanted to ensure the company transition would be seamless." Williams did not confirm or deny this interpretation. Instead, he put on his reading glasses and prepared to begin. Before he could start, Maxwell stood up, smiling broadly at everyone in the room. "If I could just say something quickly," he interjected. "This is obviously a formality we need to go through, but I want to reassure everyone that Walker Construction and Properties will continue Dad's legacy while embracing necessary modernization." He turned toward me with a smirk that made my stomach tighten. "I am taking the house and the business," he announced confidently. "She gets nothing. Maybe a small cash settlement to be generous." Several of his business friends chuckled, and even one board member smiled indulgently. I felt my cheeks burning as everyone's eyes turned to me, some with pity, others with amusement. "Max, perhaps we should let Mr. Williams read the actual will," Amanda suggested quietly. "Why prolong things?" Maxwell countered. "Everyone knows how this works. Dad built the company for me to take over. Sherry has her own life in Chicago." More chuckles rippled through the room. I maintained my composure, eyes fixed on Jackson Williams, who was watching the scene with a neutral expression. When the laughter subsided, Williams cleared his throat deliberately. "If we could proceed with the actual reading," he said, his tone carrying a subtle edge that made the room go quiet. He began with standard legal language, then moved to specific bequests. Personal items to friends, charitable donations, and trusts established for Maxwell's children's education. Maxwell nodded approvingly through these initial portions. Then Williams paused, taking a sip of water before continuing. "Regarding Walker Construction and Properties, Roger has left very specific instructions," he said. "The company ownership is to be distributed as follows: 25% to Maxwell Roger Walker." Maxwell started to smile triumphantly. "And 75% to Sherry Lynn Walker." The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the wall clock ticking in the suddenly still room. "That is impossible," Maxwell finally sputtered. "There must be a mistake." "There is no mistake," Williams replied calmly. "Additionally, the family home and property are bequeathed to Sherry Lynn Walker, with the provision that Maxwell Roger Walker and family may continue residing in the guest house for up to 6 months during transition if needed." Maxwell's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This is ridiculous. She knows nothing about construction. She has never worked a day at the company." Williams removed another document from his portfolio. "Roger anticipated your objection and prepared this letter to be read at this juncture." He began reading Dad's words. "If you are hearing this, then Maxwell has reacted exactly as I expected. What my son does not know is that, for the past 8 years, Sherry has been completing extensive education in business management specifically tailored to our industry, including an MBA in construction management that she earned with honors. Furthermore, for the past 5 years, Sherry has been reviewing our books, projects, and operations remotely, providing me with analysis and recommendations that have repeatedly proven sound. Many of the successful initiatives credited to others originated from her insights. I have watched Maxwell's management style with growing concern. While he has strengths in client relations, his financial decisions have been increasingly reckless, with several nearly resulting in disaster for the company. Only intervention behind the scenes prevented serious consequences. This decision is not made lightly or out of any lack of love for my son. Rather, it is made out of responsibility to the 123 employees whose livelihoods depend on the company's sound management, and out of love for both my children. Sherry has demonstrated the judgment, integrity, and vision needed to lead Walker Construction into the future. Maxwell has demonstrated charm, ambition, and salesmanship, which remain valuable but cannot be the guiding forces for our family business. As Williams finished reading, several board members were nodding thoughtfully. Maxwell stood up so abruptly his chair crashed backward. "This is slander. I will contest this." He was not in his right mind when he wrote this. Williams calmly produced another document. Roger also anticipated this response. He underwent comprehensive cognitive and psychological evaluation by 3 independent experts when these changes were made. Their assessments are included in the legal filing, confirming his complete mental competence. Maxwell looked around the room wildly, seeking allies, but found uncertain faces instead. "The missing projects," one board member murmured. "The discrepancies in the West Side development budget." Roger said they were addressed, but never explained how. "The mysterious recovery of the Parkview account after they threatened to walk," another added, looking at me with new interest. "This is a conspiracy," Maxwell hissed, pointing at me. "She manipulated him when he was vulnerable. Turned him against me." The initial changes to the will were made 6 months before his diagnosis, Williams noted. The addendums were witnessed by myself, Dr. Harrison, and Judge Winters, all of whom had known Roger for decades and verified his clarity of purpose. Maxwell turned to me, his expression a mixture of rage and betrayal. "You sneaky, manipulative little." "That is enough," I interrupted, standing to face him. "This is exactly why Dad made this choice. Not because he did not love you, but because this is how you handle challenges. Blame, accusations, refusal to accept responsibility." The room went silent again as we faced each other across the table. "You have been running the company into the ground," I continued, my voice steady. "The riverfront development you are so eager to start. The land has unstable soil conditions that would require foundation work, costing millions more than budgeted. I found that in the geological surveys you never bothered to read." Several board members exchanged alarmed glances. "The eastern commercial property you wanted to sell off. It is about to be rezoned as part of the new technology corridor, which will triple its value within 2 years. Maxwell's face showed the first flicker of uncertainty. "Dad gave you every opportunity to prove yourself," I said more gently. "He wanted you to succeed. But his responsibility to the company, its employees, and its legacy had to come first." Maxwell snatched his jacket from the back of his fallen chair. "This is not over. Not by a long shot." He stormed toward the door, then turned back. "Amanda, kids, let's go." Amanda hesitated, looking between us with conflict evident on her face. "I think we should stay and hear the rest," she said quietly. That seemed to be the final blow. Maxwell slammed the door behind him as he left, the sound echoing in the stunned room. After a moment of uncomfortable silence, Williams cleared his throat again. "Shall we continue with the remainder of the will?" After Maxwell's dramatic exit, the reading continued in a subdued atmosphere. Williams detailed the remaining provisions, including management structures and transition plans Dad had meticulously outlined. When the formal portion concluded, board members and business associates approached me one by one, some curious, others clearly reevaluating their previous assumptions. "I had no idea you were involved behind the scenes," Martin Reeves, the senior board member, commented. "Roger never mentioned it." "That was intentional," I explained. Dad wanted my analysis to be based purely on the numbers and operations, not relationships or politics. As the room gradually emptied, Amanda remained seated with Thomas and Sophia, both teenagers looking shell-shocked by the unfolding drama. "I should check on Maxwell," she said when we were nearly alone, "but first, I owe you an apology." "You have nothing to apologize for," I assured her. "I do," she insisted. "I watched how Maxwell dismissed your involvement over the years. I never questioned it because it fit what he had always told me." She hesitated. "There are things you should know." After asking Thomas and Sophia to wait in the reception area, Amanda revealed what I had already suspected from the storage unit documents. "Maxwell has been struggling with gambling for the past 3 years," she confessed. "It started with sports betting, then escalated to poker games and online casinos. The financial pressure has been enormous." She detailed how Maxwell had hidden the extent of his losses from everyone, including her, until a loan shark had come to their house 6 months ago demanding payment. "Roger bailout him out," she explained. "Paid off $60,000 of gambling debts on the condition that Maxwell get help. He went to exactly 3 therapy sessions before declaring himself cured. This timeline aligned with Dad's will changes. He must have realized then that the problem was deeper than financial misjudgment. The riverfront development was Maxwell's attempt to generate a large enough commission to cover new debts," Amanda continued. "He has been desperate to get it started." "Does he still have gambling debts?" I asked. She nodded reluctantly. "About 40,000, as far as I know. But it could be more." As we talked, Williams returned with coffee and a sympathetic expression. "This is proceeding almost exactly as Roger predicted," he noted. "Including Maxwell's exit and Amanda staying behind." "Dad knew about the gambling?" I asked. Williams nodded. "He hired a private investigator last year after noticing financial discrepancies. He wanted to understand the full picture before making decisions." "Why did not he confront Maxwell directly?" Amanda asked. "He did in his way," Williams explained. "The bailout was his attempt to help while establishing boundaries. When Maxwell resumed gambling within weeks, Roger realized stronger measures were needed." Williams produced another envelope from his portfolio. "Roger left instructions for this to be given to you today, along with this." He handed me a small USB drive. "That contains all the company's true financial records, plus documentation of every unauthorized transaction Maxwell conducted over the past 3 years. Some might potentially cross legal lines." I stared at the tiny device, feeling the weight of what it represented. "Roger did not want these details made public," Williams continued. "He hoped the situation could be handled privately. But he wanted you to have all the information in case Maxwell makes good on his threats to contest the will." After Amanda left to find Maxwell, Williams and I continued our discussion in his private office. He outlined the immediate steps needed to legally establish my control of the company and suggested a communication strategy for employees and clients. "Roger believed the transition would be smoother if you had been introduced as his successor while he was alive," Williams explained. "But his illness progressed faster than anticipated." "Maxwell will not make this easy," I said. "No," Williams agreed. "But Roger chose you for a reason. He believed you could handle whatever came." By the time I left the law office, evening was falling. I drove to Dad's house, my house now, feeling the surreal weight of the day's revelations. I found Maxwell in Dad's office, rifling through drawers and files. "Looking for something?" I asked from the doorway. He straightened, his expression hardening. "Just collecting my things." "Those are company documents," I noted, seeing the folders stacked on the desk. "Documents I worked on. Projects I developed. Which legally belong to the company," I countered. "If you need copies of specific items, you can request them through proper channels." He laughed bitterly. "Proper channels? Listen to you, playing executive after one day. I am not playing Maxwell. I have been preparing for this role for years, just not publicly." He slammed a drawer shut. "I built relationships with every major client. One word from me about instability in the company leadership, and they will pull their projects. Is that really what you want? To damage Dad's legacy out of spite? Something flickered across his face, doubt, perhaps, or a moment of shame. Then his expression hardened again. You have 48 hours to make me a buyout offer, he demanded. A fair one, or I can test everything and air all the family dirty laundry in court. Including your gambling debts. The unauthorized loans from company accounts. His face paled. What are you talking about? Dad knew everything, Maxwell. He hired investigators, kept records. It is all documented. For the first time, genuine fear showed in his eyes. You are bluffing. I removed the USB drive from my pocket. Would you like to review the contents together? The board would certainly find it educational. His bravado collapsed visibly. You would do that? Destroy your own brother. I do not want to, I said truthfully. Dad did not want that either. He protected you as long as he could. Maxwell sank into Dad's chair, suddenly looking exhausted. What do you want? I want what Dad wanted. The company run properly, ethically, profitably. Employees protected. Family legacy preserved. And me. What happens to me in this perfect scenario? I considered my next words carefully. That depends on you. There could be a place for you in the company, with proper oversight and conditions. Or there could be a fair separation package. But either way, there would need to be accountability and changes. He stood abruptly, gathering the folders. I will have my lawyer contact yours. Maxwell, I called as he reached the door. This does not have to be war between us. He paused without turning. It already is. After he left, I sat in Dad's chair, running my hands over the worn leather armrests, feeling the weight of the day's events. On the desk was a photo of the four of us, Mom, Dad, Maxwell, and me, taken at the lake house the summer before Mom got sick. We were all smiling, a perfect family moment frozen in time. I will try to save him too, Dad, I whispered to the empty room. But I will protect the company first, just like you asked. The next morning, I arrived at Walker Construction headquarters at 6:30, well before the usual start time. Using the key Dad had given me years ago, I entered through the back entrance and went directly to his office, which Maxwell had taken over during Dad's illness. I spent an hour reviewing current projects and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. At 7:45, Angela, Dad's longtime executive assistant, arrived and nearly dropped her coffee when she saw me behind the desk. Sherry, I did not expect you here. Good morning, Angela, I smiled, trying to put her at ease. I am guessing Maxwell has not shared yesterday's news with the staff. Her confused expression answered my question. I briefly explained the will's provisions and my new role. There will be an all-hands meeting at 9, I concluded. Could you help arrange that? To her credit, Angela adjusted quickly. Of course. Conference room A can accommodate everyone, she hesitated. Maxwell usually arrives around 8:30. Perfect. Please send him in when he gets here. As predicted, Maxwell strode through the main entrance at 8:25, nodding to employees as he passed. Angela intercepted him, whispering something that made him stop mid-stride and look toward Dad's office, my office now. Through the glass walls, I watched his face contort with anger before he composed himself and marched toward me. He closed the door firmly behind him. Making yourself comfortable in my office, he asked with dangerous calm. My office now, I corrected gently. Though if you prefer to use it temporarily while I get up to speed, we can discuss that. You have got some nerve, he hissed, keeping his voice low. My lawyer says we can tie this up in court for years. Employees, clients, vendors all know me, not you. I have called an all-hands meeting for 9, I replied, ignoring the threat. We can present a united front if you are willing. Or I can introduce myself as the new majority owner and CEO alone. Your choice. And say what? That you are swooping in to take over with zero experience. I would rather focus on continuity and stability, I said. Dad's vision continuing under new leadership. But if you force the issue, I am prepared to explain exactly why Dad made his decision, with documentation. We stared at each other across the desk, the same standoff as the day before, but now on company territory. I will not help you steal what should be mine, he finally said. Then I suggest you clear your schedule. The transition documents need your signature by end of day, and your office needs to be vacated. His eyes widened. My office? You cannot just. Actually, I can. But I am willing to discuss alternatives if you are interested in remaining with the company in some capacity. Maxwell leaned forward, palms flat on the desk. Every client relationship is built on my personal connections. One phone call from me, and half our business walks out the door. It was the moment of truth. I reached into my briefcase and removed a folder. These are the client satisfaction surveys Dad had conducted anonymously last year, I said, sliding them across the desk. The relationship scores are strong, but there are concerning comments about overpromising, missed deadlines, and budget overruns on your most recent projects. Maxwell did not touch the folder. Dad built this company on reliability and integrity, I continued. Clients stay because of that reputation, not any individual personality. If you want to test that theory, go ahead. But understand what you are risking, not just for me, but for yourself. I could see him calculating, reconsidering. The all-hands meeting is in 20 minutes, I said. Your moves. He left without another word. I spent the next 15 minutes reviewing my notes and steeling myself for addressing a room full of employees who knew me only as the boss's daughter who had moved away. At precisely 9, I entered conference room A to find all 117 local employees assembled. Maxwell was nowhere to be seen. Good morning, I began, scanning the curious and confused faces. For those who do not know me, I am Sherry Walker. Many of you knew my father for years, some for decades. What you may not know is that, for the past 5 years, I have been working closely with him behind the scenes on company strategy and operations. I briefly explained the transition in leadership, emphasizing continuity and stability rather than the family drama. My father built this company on 3 principles: quality work, fair treatment of employees and clients, and financial responsibility. Those principles will not change under my leadership. As I spoke, I noticed Maxwell slip into the back of the room, arms crossed, watching the reactions of the employees. Questions began cautiously, but grew more direct. Where had I been all these years? What experience did I have in construction? Why had Roger never mentioned my involvement? I answered truthfully, explaining my education and the advisory role I had played. When Tony Mendez, our longest-serving project manager, asked about my knowledge of current projects, I seized the opportunity. The Westside Medical Center expansion has foundation issues that were identified in the initial survey, but not adequately addressed in the revised plans, I stated confidently. The soil compaction does not meet specifications for the proposed structure, which would create liability issues down the line. Tony's eyebrows shot up in surprise. We just discussed that in yesterday's project meeting. Maxwell said we could proceed as planned. All eyes turned to Maxwell at the back of the room. The Henderson office park is 3 weeks behind schedule, I continued, primarily due to permit delays that could have been anticipated with proper planning. The Monroe Street residential development has significant budget overruns because the initial estimates did not account for the retaining wall modifications required by the final survey. With each accurate assessment, I could see the room's perception shifting. These were not the observations of an outsider, but someone intimately familiar with the company's operations. My goal is not to disrupt, but to build on the foundation my father established, I concluded. I will be meeting with department heads individually this week to ensure a smooth transition. As the meeting broke up, I noticed clusters of employees glancing between Maxwell and me, recalibrating office politics in real time. Several approached with questions or introduced themselves, while others gravitated toward Maxwell, who had positioned himself by the door. By noon, battle lines had been drawn. Most of the project managers and engineers were cautiously open to my leadership, especially after I demonstrated detailed knowledge of their current challenges. The sales team and several site supervisors who had been hired by Maxwell remained loyal to him. Over the next week, the conflict escalated. Maxwell canceled his vacation to remain in the office, contradicting my directives when possible and undermining my authority in subtle ways. Emails questioning my decisions circulated among certain employees. Rumors about my qualifications spread to clients. I maintained a steady, consistent approach, addressing issues directly and focusing on operations rather than politics. Each day I arrived earlier and left later than anyone else, demonstrating my commitment through actions rather than words. The turning point came unexpectedly during the monthly executive review. Maxwell had prepared a presentation on the controversial riverfront development, clearly expecting me to oppose it and planning to use that opposition to paint me as overly cautious and risk-averse like Dad. Instead, I presented an alternative approach. A phased development with comprehensive soil remediation as the first stage, funded through a specialized environmental grant program I had researched. The modified plan reduced initial capital requirements while addressing the technical challenges responsibly. This approach satisfies both the expansion goals and the structural safety requirements, I explained, displaying the revised projections. It also qualifies for tax incentives under the new Urban Renewal Program. The executive team was visibly impressed, including several of Maxwell's allies. The proposal demonstrated not just technical knowledge, but innovative thinking and a willingness to move forward rather than simply maintain the status quo. After the meeting, Maxwell cornered me in the hallway. "Clever move," he conceded grudgingly. "But this little power struggle cannot continue indefinitely. The company needs clear leadership." "I agree completely," I replied. The next morning, Maxwell requested a private meeting. He arrived with a thick envelope and slid it across the desk. "My offer," he stated flatly. "I will buy your shares for the amount specified. It is fair market value based on current company valuation." I opened the envelope and reviewed the figures. The offer was for approximately 60% of the company's actual worth, substantial but significantly undervalued. This does not account for the eastern property's rezoning potential or the tax advantages of the historical building renovations, I noted. Maxwell's expression tightened. "Take it or leave it. This feud is damaging the company." I closed the folder and slid it back. "I agree the conflict is problematic, which is why I have a counter-proposal." I handed him a document I had prepared the night before. "You remain with the company as Chief Operations Officer, with a 3-year contract and performance-based compensation. You retain your 25% ownership. The gambling stops completely, with regular financial oversight and counseling as conditions of employment." His face flushed with anger. "You want to demote me and put me on probation? In my own family's company. I want to utilize your strengths while addressing the issues that concerned Dad," I corrected. "Your client relationships and industry knowledge are valuable assets. Your financial judgment and risk assessment need supervision." Maxwell stared at me in disbelief. "You cannot seriously expect me to work under my little sister's authority." "Not under. With. Different roles, different responsibilities, appropriate checks and balances." He stood abruptly. "Not a chance in hell." 3 days later, Maxwell cleared out his office and submitted his formal resignation. His departure email to the staff was brief and professional on the surface, though the underlying bitterness was evident to anyone who knew him. The following week brought the real test, as we learned Maxwell had established a consulting firm and was contacting our clients directly. 2 smaller accounts did transfer their business to him, but the major clients remained, many expressing relief that the internal conflicts they had sensed for months were finally resolved. The most surprising development came from the employees. After an initial period of uncertainty, productivity actually increased. Several managers confided that Maxwell's unpredictable decisions and last-minute changes had created constant stress and inefficiency. 6 weeks after the will reading, I called my first company-wide strategy meeting as the undisputed CEO of Walker Construction and Properties. Looking around the conference table at the engaged faces of our leadership team, I felt a bittersweet sense of accomplishment, tinged with sadness that it had come at such a high personal cost. My father believed in building things that last, I told them. Not just structures, but relationships, reputation, and legacy. That is the foundation we will continue to build upon. For the first time since Dad's death, I felt certain I was fulfilling my promise to keep the Walker legacy alive, the right way, with integrity. 6 months passed in a blur of activity. Under my leadership, Walker Construction completed the problematic Westside Medical Center project on time and under the revised budget. We broke ground on Phase 1 of the modified riverfront development, with extensive press coverage of the innovative environmental approach. The eastern commercial property was officially rezoned, instantly increasing its value by 40%. Most importantly, we stabilized the company culture. The exodus I had feared after Maxwell's departure never materialized. Instead, employees seemed to appreciate the clear communication and consistent expectations that replaced the previous unpredictability. I established a weekly open-door policy where any employee could bring concerns directly to me. Initially, few took advantage of this opportunity, but as trust built, these sessions became valuable sources of operational insights and improvement ideas. The healing of business wounds proved easier than personal ones. Maxwell and I had not spoken since his resignation. His consulting firm was struggling, according to industry gossip, with only a handful of clients and mounting overhead costs. He and Amanda had put their house on the market, downsizing to a smaller property across town. I had made several attempts to reach out to Thomas and Sophia, my niece and nephew, but Maxwell had blocked any contact. This estrangement was the most painful consequence of the inheritance battle. On a crisp October afternoon, I was surprised to see Amanda's name on my caller ID. "Sherry, I hope I am not interrupting anything important," she began hesitantly. "Not at all," I assured her. "How are you? How are the kids?" "We are managing," she replied. "Actually, I was wondering if you might be available for lunch tomorrow. There are some things I would like to discuss." We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, away from the usual business crowd. Amanda looked tired, but composed as she slid into the booth across from me. "Thank you for meeting me," she began. "Maxwell does not know I am here." "How is he?" I asked carefully. She sighed. "Struggling. The consulting business is not taking off as he expected. His reputation has. Complicated things." "I never wanted that," I said truthfully. "I know," she stirred her coffee absently. "That is partly why I wanted to talk. Maxwell may be too proud to admit it, but the family rift is taking a toll on everyone, especially the kids. They miss their grandfather, and now they have lost their aunt too." The simple statement hit me harder than I expected. In focusing on the business, I had sometimes forgotten the personal costs of the conflict. "I have tried reaching out," I reminded her. "I know." Maxwell intercepts the messages. She hesitated. "He is in therapy now. For the gambling. It was a condition I set for staying in the marriage." "That is good news," I said sincerely. "It is helping slowly. The therapist has been encouraging him to reflect on patterns of behavior, including his relationship with you and your father." She met my eyes directly. "He is not ready to reach out yet, but I thought you should know he is working on himself." Our conversation shifted to the children, their school activities, and future plans. Before we parted, Amanda hesitated again. "There is one more thing. Maxwell has been applying for jobs with other construction firms, but his reputation makes it difficult. Would you consider providing a reference focused on his technical skills and client relationships? Not as CEO of Walker Construction, just as someone who knows his capabilities." The request surprised me. "Of course," I said after a moment. Despite everything, Maxwell is talented in many aspects of the business. The relief in her eyes was palpable. Thank you. It would mean more than you know. That evening, I sat in Dad's old chair in the home office, thinking about Amanda's visit. On the desk was the family photo I had found the day of the will reading, the four of us at the lake house. I ran my finger over Maxwell's young, untroubled face in the picture. The next morning, I made a decision. I drafted a reference letter highlighting Maxwell's strengths without glossing over his departure from the company. I kept it factual, but emphasized his 2 decades of industry experience and client relationship skills. Then I did something more. I created a proposal for a potential consulting arrangement between Walker Construction and Maxwell's new firm, focused on specific client development projects where his connections could be valuable without giving him financial control. 2 days later, I emailed both documents to Maxwell directly with a simple message. If you are interested in discussing either of these, my door is open. I did not expect a response, and for 3 weeks none came. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, my assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Maxwell stood awkwardly in my office doorway, looking both familiar and somehow diminished. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a more measured presence. "Got a minute?" he asked. Of course, I gestured to the chair across from my desk. He sat stiffly, glancing around the office I had redecorated, removing most traces of both Dad and his own brief tenure. "Nice reference letter," he finally said. "Very. Fair. I meant what I wrote," I replied. He nodded, then fell silent again. I waited, giving him space to find his words. "I am not here to apologize," he finally stated. "Not yet anyway. My therapist says I need to work through my own issues before any apology would be meaningful. I appreciate the honesty. But I am here to say," he paused, visibly struggling, "I am here to say that Dad might have been right. About some things. About me not being ready." The admission clearly cost him, and I recognized it for the olive branch it was. "The consulting proposal," he continued. "Is it genuine or just pity?" "Completely genuine," I assured him. "Your network and relationships have value. This would be a legitimate business arrangement with clear boundaries and expectations." He considered this. "I would need to think about it. Discuss it with Amanda. Take all the time you need." As he stood to leave, he hesitated again. "The kids miss you. Maybe you could come to dinner sometime. Nothing fancy, just family." The simple invitation meant more than any business arrangement. I would like that very much. After Maxwell left, I felt a weight lift that I had not fully acknowledged carrying. The road to reconciliation would be long and probably never complete, but the first step had been taken. Over the following months, the consulting arrangement took shape. Maxwell worked with 3 specific clients, where his historical relationships added clear value. Our professional interactions remained formal, but gradually grew less strained. The family dinners Amanda arranged were initially awkward, but improved with repetition. 1 year after Dad's death, we held a small ceremony dedicating the new company headquarters building in his honor. Maxwell attended with Amanda and the children, standing slightly apart from the company staff, but present nonetheless. As I concluded my remarks about Dad's legacy and vision, I caught Maxwell's eye across the gathering. He gave a small nod, not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. It was enough for now. That evening, alone in the house that still felt partly like Dad's, I reviewed the journey of the past year. The company was stronger than ever, with record profits and an expanded workforce. The family remained fragmented, but healing had begun. Dad's legacy continued, though in ways none of us had anticipated. I had learned painful but valuable lessons about family dynamics, about business leadership, about human nature. I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed and weaknesses I needed to address. Most importantly, I had learned that inheritance was about much more than assets or control. It was about values, vision, and responsibility. "I kept my promise, Dad," I whispered to the quiet room. "The Walker legacy lives on. Not exactly as any of us planned, but perhaps exactly as it needed to." The road ahead would have its challenges, but for the first time since that day in the attorney's office, I felt genuine hope for both the business and the family. Not a fairy tale ending with perfect reconciliation, but something real and honest, a foundation strong enough to build upon. Have you ever had to stand your ground when everyone underestimated you? Or discovered hidden strengths when faced with unexpected challenges? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the most difficult moments reveal our true capabilities. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and personal growth. Thank you for sharing this moment with me, and remember that sometimes the most valuable inheritance is not what we receive, but what we discover within ourselves.